Welcome to the party, pal. This is Fountainhead Forum 40. I have invited all of the presidential candidates for the Libertarian Party to come onto my show. And so far, one has accepted, and that is the man named Joshua Rodriguez. He is running for president, hoping to get the nomination of the Libertarian Party in 2024. That's about 14 months or 15 months away from now, but yes, and a lot will happen since then, but he was the first to accept. So I thought I would bring him on here as a service to my listeners who are in the Libertarian Party if they want to find out more about this guy. How are you, Joshua?
I'm doing great. And of course, I appreciate your time. I'm glad to be here. 100% libertarian way to go. I hope people really enjoy today's conversation about libertarianism.
Yeah. Yes, I really don't want to get into the game of saying, well, this guy can win, this guy can't win. Let's really, at the convention, anything can happen. And does. So, so how did you end up here? How did you decide you were going to be a libertarian candidate?
Yeah, I've always been a third party candidate. And so I think most people are nowadays. A lot of young people, I would say like 1/3 of America, right, are independent. And so once upon a time, congressional district popped up and I said, hey, let me try running for a Democrat. Let me see what it's like running for a Republican. And man, I did not like it. Like, how can you be a Democrat and say pro Second Amendment? How can you be a Republican and say, you know what, the environment matters? And so the Libertarian Party just kind of speaks independent to me. And so you could be who you are, who you want to be, and really just connect with the voters in a different way. And so I think that's how I got here.
When and where was that? You ran for a congressional seat. When and where was that?
Yeah, 2018, after the Parkland shooting, I ran for city council, and I was actually gerrymandered out of my district, and so I just ran for mayor at that time. And then in 2020, I ran for United States Senate. But when Colorado got their infamous congressional District 8, that was a really high-profile kind of seat, and so I wore the different D's and R's, right? And so in the end, I kind of just decided to stick independent and libertarian. And so that's kind of like my little short journey, but definitely a lot of community involvement type stuff, boards and commissions, community meetings, campaigning, all that.
So the first time you ran for office was in 2018.
Oh yeah, definitely. I've always been engaged in community type projects ever since like junior high, right? Student council in high school, student council in college and stuff like that. Just always participating in everything around me. And so it's kind of like been instilled in who I am growing up grew up in a Christian family. My mom was very adamant about domestic violence issues. And so I remember bringing boxes of food to women in need and stuff like that. We're having a hard time. And so it kind of stuck with me for a while. I've been a nonprofit operator for 5 years now, and it's something that I just want to just pass on to my children. That influence in a positive way is something that I enjoy.
Yes. Well, yes. Well, most libertarian organizations are absolutely positively nonprofits. Yeah, and that's how a lot of politicians get started. They ran for office in school or something like that, or student council, or maybe even went to I went to Boys State, maybe something like that. But yeah, so you were on council and they gerrymandered your district out, or you ran for council, and what city was this in Colorado?
This was the city of Arvada.
Arvada, yeah.
Yeah, they were picking new districts all of a sudden, and I kind of got drawn. They drew me out. So other candidates at the time were like, I don't necessarily, want to poke at Joshua, or I like him or don't like him, but they started contacting me going, that is ridiculous, and I'm like, seriously, this is how I get the first flavor of politics, is getting gerrymandered. And I'm like,
yeah. So you were on council how long, or you ran for council?
You know what? I ran for council. I actually withdrew my candidacy. You get picked on a lot. Politics is dirty, especially your first time around. But, I had, this connection with, these kind of people that just show up and, give you advice. But, this was a political insider that said, you know what, I like you, Josh. I don't like this person, but my group is going to sue you for financial whatever, and I was like, I didn't even accept any donations. They're like, I don't care, man. You're going to have to get a lawyer and all of that. And I'm like, is this really going to happen? And, this group sues all the time. So I'm like, you know, I don't think I can really afford a lawyer. I mean, come on, that's not fair. And so I think my first run at politics, this that was probably like the last time. Fool me once, fool me twice. But
Yeah.
I'm more prepared now for sure.
Yeah, and by the way, Arvada's outside of Denver, right? How many people live in Arvada?
I 100,000, maximum 120,000. So not necessarily the biggest city in the world, but definitely has some
Yeah,
stature there.
and so then you decided to run for mayor, and then you ran for mayor, and then you ran for a congressional seat.
I ran for United States Senate in
Okay, you
2020.
ran for U.S. Senate
Um, yeah, I was a third
in
party
2020.
candidate.
So yeah, so who would have been in that race? You ran for U.S. Senate in 2020, yeah, in Colorado. Yeah,
Yeah, John Hickenlooper, the governor of Colorado. He ran as a Democrat. Uh, as an independent, a lot of community type events happen. Youth led events, climate change events, and so third party candidates got a little shot, like myself, to debate Democrats. Republicans obviously never showed up to any of these kinds of events, but I enjoyed my time a lot. John Hickenlooper never showed up, though. By the way, I think he just kind of felt, I'm going to drop like $100 million and just walk into this bad
so
boy.
so this was in 2020. Cory Gardner was running as the incumbent and was on the red team, and then as you pointed out, Hickenlooper uh, went into the got into the got the nomination from the blue team, and then ran, and then ended up winning. That's very interesting. So you ran for Senate. Where did you run for Senate? You ran as an independent, you said?
Yeah, the Unity Party. It was between a couple folks and I, and during the 2020 Black Lives Matter movement,
Yes.
I felt very strongly to withdraw my candidacy and hand it over to Chairman Sekou of the Black Panthers. And so,
Yes.
when the nomination came, and I said, hey, I'm withdrawing my candidacy, and I'm voting. I put my vote in for the nomination for Chairman Sekou.
Yeah.
And so I think you were a little bit when it comes to my candidacy as presidency nomination. I'll probably get an endorsement from him.
So what is the Unity Party? I've not that looks like it might be a single state party or something like that.
No, they're growing all over the United States. Slowly but surely. I think third party candidates are the way to go. You're going to see a lot of third party candidates popping up, Green Party, those sorts of things. And so, it's a very exciting time in Colorado. It got a little bit dirty with the Green Party. It got taken over. It turns into something else. So it's a different beast. You think Green Party, but at the same time, it's not really the Green Party anymore. It's like some secret organization of politicians now that you can't get into.
Yeah, I don't really follow much with the Green Party, although it's had its ups and downs. So yeah, so you're no longer in Colorado though. When did you leave Colorado?
No, I'm in Colorado,
You
but
are in Colorado, okay? Or well, I think right now at present you're in Florida, but you're still living in Colorado. I'm sorry about that.
yeah, I do process and engineering type work, and so I could be in New Mexico, Arizona, California, New Jersey. I could be all sorts of places doing work, taking on consultant positions. And so I've done pharmaceutical work. I've worked for adhesive manufacturing companies. And so I really enjoy science. And so
Yes.
people need my help. And so when I see a company that needs help, I'm like all about it. So I've seen companies where, a young person my age inherits a whole company and they're like, Josh, can you please help? Like, we have no processes and procedures set up, and we don't even understand our current condition, let alone what the ideal condition needs to be, those sorts of things. I enjoy that completely. So I've been trained by like Toyota Production Systems, and if you think of like 5S, Six Sigma, Kaizen events, those sorts of fun things I love to do. And so you give me the task as a scientist, as president of the United States, we're going to reboot healthcare. We're going to improve the
Yeah.
process. And so that's my mindset.
So process engineering. So basically, that's, for example, how do I build a car as quickly and efficiently as possible? I guess is that what you're basically doing? You're just making things go efficiently.
Yeah, Toyota does it a lot. Tesla's
Yeah.
going to have to do it, right? A lot of these car manufacturers are going to have to say, but like there's a huge furniture company that I spoke to, they just merged. And so they want to have a new
Yeah.
product. And so they know what the line looks like, but this new product might change. And so what's that condition, How do you make everything flow correctly? Because you don't want to go too fast, too slow. You don't want
Oh
people waiting
yes.
around.
Well, the other problem too is if you go fast too slow, you alienate people. And for example, if you got, if like when airline, you got one airline that has all Boeings and the other airline has all Airbuses. What do you do in a situation like that? I mean, do you switch all, just say, okay, we're going all Boeing or all Airbus, or, it's, there's a lot of problems. And it sounds like, maybe you make mergers work, but, and also if you're going, obviously, if you're going to run for president, you're going to know how to travel. So it sounds like you're pretty well traveled.
Yeah, but I know production, right? I know business, I know
Yeah.
manufacturing, and so a lot of this things that are going on with opening up free markets, opening up the borders with other
Yeah.
countries, businesses are going to really profit from a libertarian. And so
Oh, yes.
when I in industry, I'm constantly waiting for parts, stainless steel equipment that's like being hijacked by the ports and getting sucked in and you can't find it for like thousands of years and you're like, what's going on? When COVID hit, it was a mess, way beyond the lockdowns. It was everything was halted. It was a mess. So production wise, manufacturing, those are the sorts of things that, I have the energy to fix. I don't know if Biden right now or Trump really has the
Yeah.
energy for that, but I do. I definitely do.
Yeah. You definitely saw how damaging these insane policies were to fight the big bad virus. I can see, and you see that firsthand. Do you think the supply, how long do you think it will take before the supply chains recover from all this insanity? Have they recovered now? Will they? I mean,
No, it's not. It hasn't recovered. There was a really bad effect if you think of supply and demand, right? So if I
yes.
if I buy something from the company and I overbuy, right? It's COVID. We don't have a lot of these. Let's overbuy and stockpile. Where you're telling that company you're buying it from, that's the demand, and right. So they need to ramp up production, manufacturing to meet that demand, and so it really does throw things out of whack. Meanwhile, these people are hoarding way too much, and there's this idea of like just in time, right? You pull the parts, you use them, and then boom, shakalaka. 2 weeks later, there's more parts. Why are we stockpiling all these parts? But when COVID hit, it's like, oh, that 2 week delivery never showed, and it's partly
Yeah.
because people are overbuying here and overbuying there, so they have to fill it, and you're waiting your turn. Meanwhile, these people are stockpiling months worth of equipment. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. I used to work for a computer company years ago, and they, when you could, and they were a fairly big, company that just built white boxes, not Dells, not IBMs, but just built their own computers that, the Windows computers, as it was said back then, the IBM compatibles. And that was a real issue because, and it got to this point, where you had this inventory, all this inventory that was obsolete, and they didn't know what to do with it. And especially in computer parts, when you have, in this time, you had motherboards that, that were for 486s, and, we were selling Pentium 2s. I mean, what do you do for those motherboards for 486s? You just, that was definitely an issue. It's you don't want to have too many parts, but you don't want to have too many parts, but you also don't want to have too few of them, so that you can, handle an emergency when you can. So
Yeah, you're exactly
definitely a
right. You don't
problem.
want to hold on to waste, and then if something becomes obsolete, like you just said, that's kind of scary for any, because that's just money
And
just sitting there.
and especially nowadays too, when you have these, these inventory taxes, you end up paying a tax on the inventory that you have. I can remember saying, we get those computers out of here today. It's like, oh, that's why. Thank you. why they have to be out of here today, because tomorrow we'll have to be taxed on the inventory that's sitting here. So if we can get them out to the customer today, and it's rather unfortunate, but also really shows the dislocation. So you're still living in Colorado. Who are some friends you have in the LP right now in Colorado? I mean, do you know who some of the chair, like or Karen Harless, the LNC secretary, or some of the other Colorado libertarians?
Yeah, I do. I definitely get invites all the time. We got Spike Cohan's coming down pretty soon. But you have like folks like Ryan Raymond. He's like the secretary, I think, like that. You got these other people like that you just meet. There's this one dude. His name's like Chris Baker.
I'm Chris Baker, so yes.
Oh yeah, Chris, right? Larry Sharp, all the people that I've been meeting as libertarian candidates. Um, you're constantly meeting new people and getting in contact with them. I was talking to Larry Sharp, just the other day, and I'm like,
Yeah.
Your community involvement just with speaking with candidates and folks that have different experiences, like you become the expert. And so like as I'm meeting all these people, my cabinet's filling up. I'm president of the United States, and we have to start picking libertarians and picking people that just understand the world around us. Because for me, it's not, I don't want to just pick a politician. And so every time I'm meeting new people like yourself, it's almost like an interview for us. Like I watch so many episodes from you, Chris, that I'm just like, you just know too much. It's just ridiculous. And so I can just see myself, having a conversation, going back and forth with all these different types of ideas, because politics is crazy. It's complex. But then when you start mixing in like people and business and policy making, it definitely becomes complex, because you're not a Democrat, you're not a Republican. And so you're kind of just shooting the arrow straight down the middle. And, you're really just focusing on people. It's not about, that really strong policy that you get rhetoric that you might get with Republicans or Democrats. So meeting people has been fun.
Oh yes, Larry Sharp is one of the best ambassadors the Libertarian Party has out there, and you were in that debate with some of the other candidates who had announced. So that was very interesting. Larry's a great guy. And if Larry threw his hat in and decided to run for president, he'd probably take it easily. But I'm not here to talk about other people. So who has influenced you over the years and influenced your worldview on all this? Any books you've read, or any movies you've seen, or any podcasts you listen to, or anything like that?
Yeah, I've been like really involved just in real world topics. And so if you think about like Twitter and all different types of social media and stuff like that, just then, like even like what you were talking about, books, I'm a nonfiction person, so I'm constantly reading science and those sorts of things. And so I haven't really honed down on people that I follow or have like some kind of influence behind me, only because I'm always picking people's idea. That's one of the things about a politician is I've always constantly been listening. I've been because people will just come up with ideas, and whether they realize it or not, they're giving me a solution, a hint, some kind of like way, a pathway to like continue down to fix a problem that I've been thinking about. And so by doing these sorts of things and meeting people, it's been important. But I'm definitely a nonfiction person. And so I think right now I have like 12, probably like 3,000 people I'm following. I'm legitimately following 3,000 people. So it definitely gets intense. So I haven't really been like honing in on one particular person. But there's always those politicians you watch that you disagree with or not agree with. And so they always catch your eye a little bit.
So what's a political book, or who's a writer that really influenced your political attitude, your political philosophy?
Old school philosophers. That was like one of the first things I've done when I went to college is I took like every philosophy class. And so Socrates, Plato, like just going back from the beginning of understanding, their ideas, all the way up to when you fast forward into like John Locke and the birth of like the Constitution and stuff like that. So it influences you in a different way, but it's real life. It's nonfiction, and so there's stories in it too that you can think of, like, Socrates being broke in one point of his life, and he's like, hey, I'm just gonna breed sheep and sell sheep and make all this money, and then he makes all this cash, and now he's free to be a philosopher and not work. And it's like, is it really just that easy to start a business and make money? And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, it probably is. Anyone can start a business and start making money. And so those sorts of things kind of like always impacted me and kind of followed me in a different way. But it's definitely nonfiction for me.
Yeah, assuming you've read the translations of the Greek classics and not the originals. But,
right.
Yeah, but that's that's the now the real philosophers will read them in the originals. But yes, and maybe some classics from Rome as well. But yeah, that takes a lot of effort to learn those languages and read that stuff. But interesting. So you said you did read John Locke. What did you like or not like about John Locke, or what really influenced you with John Locke?
Yeah, that whole transition between how Europe took over the whole United States, right? And they're talking about these ideas and laws, and that constitution of like pursuit of happiness, and what that really means for an individual person. It kind of always stuck with me in a different way. For me, it's like you have like all these people around you that might stop you and push you away, push you down. As a politician, it's always frustrating because you go out, you put your foot forward, you do it in a positive way with good intentions. At least that would hopefully people think that from a politician, and then you get smashed, and then it doesn't feel good, and you're like, seriously, I just done all this crazy awesome stuff, and you're not even really watching. You're just like pushing me down. But that's my pursuit for happiness, because I want people to have that right. And so I'm going to fight for it. As a politician, I put that on my shoulders, stomp me down, because I'm really here to help out these people. And so I'm like a sacrifice lamb, hit me, stab me, push me, whatever you want. I'm going to take the brunt end of it. But for me though, it's a pursuit of happiness, because when you think of law enforcement, the idea of police alternatives in your community is something that actually is important to me, because when you go out into your community and you do something and you start to have a voice and you say, hey, that's wrong, you're going to get contentious, very, very problematic issues when it comes to speaking out against municipalities. And so when I was running for mayor at that time, you're talking about all these issues. The city wants you to talk about good things. Oh, we're doing great. Oh, don't talk about they just beat the crap out of an autistic person, and the mom filmed it and it's all over the internet. Don't talk about that.
Yes, there's a lot of things out there that we need to definitely talk about. I don't know. Yeah, there's so many things to talk about. Period. That it just seems like you know what, we've all got too much to talk about. It seems like, but we'll see what happens. You've got an interesting Twitter feed here. Your Twitter picture doesn't quite look like you here. I wonder wonder what's different about it. But maybe that was an older photo. You have the glasses on. You don't have the glasses on here. So,
oh yeah, I'm not wearing my glasses.
Curious, what since you deal with industry and a lot of process engineering stuff, what do you think of what's going on with East Palestine, Ohio right now?
Yeah, you kind of have to understand the science behind it. It's very curious about what chemicals were on it, and so I don't really know the manifest. We do know that some of the chemicals that got released are potentially carcinogenic. They're oil-based material that are used in plastic. Every type of plastic has some type of oil derivative in it, and so it's kind of interesting because the chemical that they're saying it is has like a half-life of like 12 hours. So if it spills into your waterways, it literally just goes away within 12 hours. But it will just mess up all the aquatic life, because high contamination for fish, insects, birds, it's going to get them. But when you look at the people, it's like, what impact did it really have on their body, and what other chemicals are there, and so I'm thinking to myself, is this really the chemical they're talking about? Is that why there's been such a slow response, or is it just the government not doing their job again? Oh, it's really okay, but we're not going to tell anybody, so we're just not going to have a response and not give them money. And so are we really supposed to have these train companies, right? What's their response? How come they failed at their response? Why are we waiting for the EPA to come? Um, they have to fly in and do a whole bunch of stuff just to even get started. That could be like 12, 24 hours later. Obviously, it was like a week later.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, I haven't followed that enough. I probably should. It seems like there's just so much to follow out there. It's almost as if we have too much information to consume.
You're right.
One thing I asked you earlier about traveling. Do you mostly just travel around the U.S. or have you traveled a lot around the world?
No, I haven't really traveled around the world. I've been to like Japan, places like other countries like Taiwan or those sorts of places. I would want to definitely keep visiting. It's a different place, but mostly around the United States. I've been helping a lot of companies out that are American based for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. So yeah, so you said you went to Japan. How was Japan? How was Japan?
Um, y- like once you work, one of the companies I used to work for was a Japanese company, and so you get a higher level training in analytical chemistry, and so these techniques you would go and get trained. I think my first introduction, right, was eating sushi, and it was raw chicken, and they're like, "Oh, just eat it with wasabi," and I'm like, "Okay, just eat it with wasabi." So that was like my first sushi, and I don't really eat sushi. Like my wife introduced me to salad at one point in time, and so I think I was just making salad really wrong. That's why I never liked it. But I got a little bit healthier over the years.
Japan certainly seems to do a lot of things very efficiently, and so
It's actually
so
been scary. I don't know if their retirement population is booming. Their elderly population is skyrocketing, and so they're thinking about things like ritual suicide, and so places like Canada have it legalized, and so you hear stories about veterans out there that they're hurting and they need help, and you have like their own VA people saying, "Oh, we can assist you with suicide." That's ridiculous, and so I worry about the United States because there's like 60% of our population is going to be like 65 plus. And so you have all these young people right now that are like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they're like, I want to be like a social media TikToker. And I'm like, oh, that's great. Like that's not a trade. And so what I'm really worried about is how do we train these people in trades if everyone's retired? And so that's one of the issues right now. And the collateral damage, the collateral issue is housing goes up, right? Labor, cost of labor, materials, everything goes up
yeah.
so high.
One of these, I'm reading a lot about housing, and the cost of housing is due to a lot of this, as they call it, NIMBYism. Not in my backyard, and you have all these people that every time somebody wants to build a housing project, they have to, somebody goes to City Hall and gets it stopped. So you have this perverse subsidy for anybody who's already gotten in. It's like, I got my house. Screw everybody else who doesn't have a house. I mean, and it really, I think it's really pathologically horrible, and it just rips apart the whole concept of community. But I don't know how this problem gets fixed, but
I think it just gets worse. Yeah,
yeah,
people don't like communities are like, I love my small town, and so you build more houses. It's like, oh, now the streets get congested, and then the Democrats want to build affordable, high-rise, four-story houses and high density housing, and it's like, affordable housing has to be high density, and people complain, oh, well, then there'd be crime, and so it's definitely a complex issue. Um, one of the other issues for young people, and this is just like a bummer of a topic, but young people have like a highest rate of suicide right now, and so secondary is like youth gun violence, and then now I'm worrying about like enlarged hearts and stuff like that. So I feel like young people are under attack in all different types of ways, and so when you look at education, and so libertarian parties all about school choice, but high school graduation rates are low, college entry rates are low, college graduation rates are really low, and so it's when you think of service workers like doctor, nurses, firefighters, even for them to be able to afford a home in the future, let alone get into a career like that, it's like pretty limited. It's definitely scary, and it almost becomes like a complex issue. How do you fix all that in one fell swoop, right?
I think America is just broken in so many ways right now, and I don't know how it's ever going to get out of all this. But yeah, so yeah, I've noticed I've been looking at some of your tweets here recently. Said gun violence is a complex issue. It's a problem I aim to fix as a libertarian president. Although I commonly oppose special interest groups, those victims that March does have an important voice and opinion on the matter. I feel for the loss. We can and fix this issue.
Yeah, march for your lives, right?
Yeah, what's your feelings about that? Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure even if that group even likes me for me even to say that anything special or not special about them. But when you think of special interest groups in politics and like lobbyists, I'm opposed. I'm like opposed, right? And so you have like these young people that participated in the Parkland shoot that were in the Parkland shooting. They were a victim, and so they became like this dominant voice. I won't name him. You can name him if you want, but now he runs the March for Your Lives, type policy. But for me, it's like I followed you. I enjoyed what you had to say because it was so important. Because you're speaking for the youth, you're speaking for your generation. Now you're just a paid protester, and so it ruins everything. Politics will ruin everything. But the people within the organization, they're victims. And so that's why they're there. Even though they're wearing the t-shirts and they're participating and they're going to all the city council meetings and just yelling and screaming, those are the victims. They have a voice, but they're also the people that are the educated people that will actually have solutions that we need. Even though they're saying, take your guns away, those are the people that I feel for. It's the victims. And so one of the things I aim to do is to fix things like school shooting and youth gun violence. And so I think Republicans and maybe even other libertarians are just focusing on, it's a Second Amendment right. So I'm not here to take your Second Amendment or gun rights away at all. That's why I'm a libertarian. But I think one of the solutions when you start thinking about gun violence is giving the people the right to bear arms. And so this is just another story. 2020 Black Lives Matter movement, there was this woman in her 30s. She was part of the Denver Police Department accountability board, right? When it came time to protest, she was a protester. She led the protests. Someone to follow. I followed her. I was out there listening, just following it. I'm a politician, so it's my job to really understand those sorts of things. And so that's what I did. And it got her position got hijacked by like the Denver mayor and the police department. The police chief never kept her promises, but she ended up running for politics. She's an abolitionist, right? Abolish the police. And that might be a libertarian viewpoint. So there you go, more points, right? She ran as a Democrat. Well, guess what? She wants to abolish the police. Now she is sponsoring legislation to take your gun rights away. So how does that make sense? Take away the police and your gun rights. And so what does that leave you? That just leaves you more of a victim. And so, it gets almost confusing with Democrats sometimes. And so when I start speaking about those, am I supposed to speak out against her? Hey, I have to point at her and say, that's not right. So now I can't be a Democrat. You know what I mean? And so that's why I'm a libertarian. I can't be a Republican. I can't be a Democrat. I have to be a libertarian. So that's kind of like one of the important philosophies about Second Amendment rights is once it's taken away, you can never really get it back. And you have to be worried about what politicians might do.
Yes. So, who are some candidates that have run for office maybe in the last 10 years or that you really admire and thought you see, I want my campaign to be like that one?
Um, I really don't have like any candidates in mind that I can really just point to. Only because of the political rhetoric, and there's no real third party candidates out there. Even though libertarians kind of have like a whole bunch, a slew. But one of the people that I enjoyed watching was Bernie Sanders, only because he was for the people. Even though he has like socialist viewpoints and the Green New Deal type of issues that would come associated with it, you knew he was true. He was a true politician. He cared about the people, and so that was one of the things that I enjoyed about Bernie Sanders was getting at that little bit of authenticity about politics. Um, the Yang Gang, right? President of the United States, Andrew Yang. He was
Yeah,
one
Andrew
person that actually went out and campaigned for on the streets, handing out flyers, those sorts of things. And so, there's plenty of politicians out there you can really find interesting. And so,
yes.
um,
Yes, you admire Bernie Sanders and you campaign for Andrew Yang. So yes, all right. Do you want to try to get Andrew Yang into the Libertarian Party, or
do I want to run against Andrew Yang? Is it what you're
no?
saying?
Get Andrew Yang into the Libertarian Party.
I think he's indoctrinated. He's officially right now. He's a libertarian. He is. Anybody that gets denounced by the Democrats or the Republicans is a libertarian automatically. So when you hear someone say, "Oh, I'm not running for a Republican anymore," like the state of Arizona, you're a libertarian now. And so I think that's just how it is. But people don't ever really want to admit it that they're actually libertarians or understand it completely. But I think Andrew Yang is. I think a lot of people that he interviews and talks with are definitely libertarian. But when it comes down to where do I get the most money from in support? Sometimes it's just let's just run to the DNR, Democrat.
Yeah. Yeah. So, were there any libertarians who've run for office recently that you really thought were doing a great job? I mean, in 2022 or in the past?
Yeah, I can't say I have in particular, only because we're the Libertarian Party is kind of like in a transition. You think of Congressman Amash. He came out and actually ran for president of the United States, was given the nomination, and then kind of chose not to complete that last step, and so the nomination went to an alternative candidate. Um, I hope that doesn't happen again. People love him, and he's already been down that politician road. But people have to realize that a lot of people that run for politics these days are retired. They're older. They have like money in the bank that just burning a hole in their pockets, and in actuality, they have nothing to lose. You can't call their company up and say, "Hey, so and so, fire him," or they don't have like a young family where it's going to like impact them greatly. I've been married 15 years, have 3 kids, so politics has definitely put a toll on my life. But I'm a fighter, and I'm just going to keep fighting all the way up on top of the hill, literally, right? And so you have these politicians who really can't ever take it to the next step. And so when you think of like people like Amash, why not? Why can't he? Or uh, a lot of folks that have run for politics, why aren't they running again or keep going and keep going, keep trying? You know, it's kind of like interesting, but there's definitely not a candidate out there because it's a rare thing. It's actually a rare thing.
Yeah. I don't know how old you are, but who do you consider to be best and worst presidents of your lifetime?
Best and worst. Just within my generation, I would say
Your
probably,
lifetime since you were born. Since I don't know when you were born, but
yeah, since my influence, I would probably say George W. Bush. It's always interesting to kind of see presidents go through politics, and then you believe one thing, and then now you get to watch all these documentaries about how we really should just end war completely, and how the CIA really screws things up. And then now I get to run as a politician just based on those ideas to stop it. And those sorts of things influence me, even though it was a negative way. But I can definitely be like, that's not okay. Even when you think about politicians like Barack Obama, I'm like one of the first, if only, that I can think of, being Latinx, right, running for president of the United States. There's not a candidate like me. And so if I'm president of the United States, I'm like the youngest president in United States in history, right? And so when you think about Barack Obama, you know, he was meddling with countries like Haiti and getting involved in wars. I think every single president has, and so you have this level of respect for certain presidents about what you can learn from, and even. But then at the same time, you're like, can you really vote them in? And so like even with President Trump, with things with like social media giants and like these big tech companies that censor and have like all these sorts of First Amendment right issues or whatever it may be, Trump was really trying to fix those issues. And so you can almost vote for him just because you really do want to get those things fixed. But at the same time, do you really admire a president like that, based on all his ideas? And so that's always going to be an issue with people. It's like, I remember when Trump and Hillary Clinton ran, and then a third party candidate won Utah completely, president of the United States. Both candidates lost. And so people were like disappointed. They don't want to vote for Hillary, right? Or Trump. So now they're voting third party. And so that third party candidate had the highest third party candidate votes in history. And so you never really know how politics might be, or how presidential elections the outcomes might be. And so I'm definitely a hopeful. And so when you were like,
yeah,
can you point out a politician that you admire? It's like, to me, it's like most politicians are just saying, as a libertarian, what's the chances if you're going to win? Like, I'm an Olympian right now. I'm envisioning the gold medal. I'm not going to say we don't have a chance. Once you do that, you're just admitting defeat. And it's just like, what's the point? You're just like what's the point of running for president then? Literally.
yeah. I actually Amash was never nominated. He jumped into the race rather late and then jumped out of maybe 2 weeks later. You're talking about Utah in 2016. I believe that was Evan McMullen in Utah.
Yeah. What candidate? What was he, like a Republican or Democrat?
He was one of those never Trump red teamers.
He was like on the Bush
Some
side or
of us
something.
libertarians jokingly called him Egg McMuffin. Egg McMuffin. Yeah. Egg McMuffin. Yes.
Ooh. Yeah, but it was interesting when they're like, "Oh, someone else gets a whole state." It's like, because right now, like we have candidates that are running for president. They're like, "I think I can get this congressional district," and so it's like, what's my goal going to be, literally? And so I think if I can have like those little colors of yellow around every university in the whole entire country, that would be my goal, because I'm like really going after the young people and really trying to motivate them to get involved. Like the future Libertarian Party, in my opinion, it belongs to the Gen Z 100%. So if someone like in a state Libertarian Party raises their hand, is like, oh, I want to run this joint, and they're like, oh, you're Gen Z, it's like everyone vote that person in and just let them have it.
Yes, McMuffin got 21% in Utah, so that was 21, 22% in Utah. Yeah, that was also about over 1/3 of all the votes he got nationwide. So Anyway, so yeah, so that's interesting. Yeah, you said the worst was Bush. You didn't really have a best though, so
Yeah, I can't really say I have a best.
yeah. Sounds like you've always been, you've been volunteering with domestic violence shelters and as at a young age, which of course is something you can do, and working for any other causes that are near and dear to your heart right now.
Um, I think the most infamous one was COVID. When they did all the lockdowns, I was part of the Jefferson County Food Security Task Force, and so the task force created the first ever 211. You call 211 to find free food now, right by 24/7 near you.
Yes.
And so that was good. And then my nonprofit brought over 5,000 pounds of food to the community. And I had young people pulling over, literally like saying, "Oh, I need water." And then I had, older women asking me for like feminine supplies and stuff like that. Like, how in need do you have to be to like really ask those things? And so there was a lot of people suffering. It impacted me in a different way completely. And so I think most people, they talk about it, but they might not have like necessarily the experiences associated with it. I do, and so I always try to do things that helps me better understand the world around me. And so like I've been part of the community emergency response team. So I've been doing search and rescues, FEMA trained, mass casualty events, and so national disasters. And so when you think about like Turkey with earthquakes and just really understanding that whole process and what's really going on there for first responders, it's definitely it impacts you in a different way because it's real life now. And so I never want to see those sorts of things happen in the United States. And so like as the president of the United States, you know, I'm going to be working on making sure that we're safe and secure and we have health and safety 24/7. But those are the sorts of things that I enjoy doing. I think any young person, millennial, or would enjoy those sorts of activities in general. Volunteering and handing out food is a little bit different, but you're part of a team and you're working together, you're strategizing, you're trying to fix problems. And so I'm good at it. I'm a process engineer. But I get exposed to all these different types of things. And so I always enjoy myself, no matter even how hard it really is.
Yes, shut down the economy for no reason, then give food out. But so yeah, so certainly, what are your if you're elected president, what is your first day or and even your first week or month going to look like?
Yeah, you're gonna have to go through those steps of making sure that everything's organized. You're gonna have to find those people that you trust, right? But my first 100 days, I do have a goal to like cure HIV, right? And one of the things you can do is just get rid of the FDA, right? They're just stopping the whole progressive process that scientists go through to, find cures like that. So literally, with 100 days, you can cure HIV. And I think most presidents go down that road of saying, hey, in the long term, let's focus on curing cancer. But do they? I think they don't, because they're always focusing on things like war, like right now in Ukraine. And so when you have a president like me who's going to end war, cure cancer, that's the truth, right? I'm a scientist, not a lawyer. You're hiring someone that understands science completely, and we can work with nations in a different way that we haven't ever done before and really move towards peace. And so I think every country in the whole entire world can really get behind those sorts of issues, collaborating and fixing things around us. And so health and safety issues are definitely going to be on my platform. We're going to be working on understanding how to change things like ending the war on drugs. And so federal departments like the DEA are going to be transitioned out. And so when you think about what's going to happen in the first 100 days, it's going to be pretty intense. But there's going to be a lot of positive things. Like, we're not going to overspend $1.5 trillion in the government anymore. We're going to really balance our budget and make sure the next generation can actually get refunds, right? You put money in, the
Yes.
government's not spending, you gave them too much money, it gets refunded back to you. Right now, it's just going into a black hole. They're just
Yeah.
like printing money like crazy.
Well, paying off the debt would be a good start. Also, if we remove a lot of the regulatory apparatus, that's going to increase a lot of profits, and with the income tax, we'll have a lot more tax revenue come in. I mean,
Hmm.
you know, you know, economic growth is what you can, yeah, but also it's going to be very interesting. So you'd get rid of the FDA and end the war on drugs. So that's a good start.
Yep. I mean, I think we talked about opening up a little bit of the free trade agreements, and so I
Yeah.
think businesses are going to see a huge benefit being able to actually buy and sell with companies without having any issues, especially when you think of like manufacturing delays and those sorts of things. Um, as a millennial in general, like that's why I'm running, right? I don't want to slow down my process. If I thought running and getting elected mayor and staying in the position for 4 years would actually benefit me, right, education wise and policy wise and government wise, I would do it. So I think I already learned what I needed to learn completely. And so when I ran for Senate for 2020, just understanding a lot of the questioning and the worldwide issues, I think it just all prepares me for being in and doing the presidential job. But there's a lot of benefits out there, and so I think companies themselves can really benefit from a libertarian candidate. And so we don't need to like stick around with Democrats and Republicans anymore. I want to fast forward to like the fast forward button. That movie Adam Sandler with the click, like click, click, click. Fix this problem. Like,
Yes.
why are we fighting anymore? Stop.
Well, Adam has done a whole lot of movies, so that doesn't really help me much. But so
Mm-mm-mm.
so obviously, yeah. Would you obviously there you'd have to get some congressional oversight. I mean, what do you think about American foreign policy right now?
Um, you know, it's really hard to say, right? Because you have to be in a government position, you have to have like secret clearance, and then you have to be in a boardroom with military personnel really talking about these issues. But when you think of like places like Iran, right? They had recent protests. They're going to have political leaders, maybe young, maybe old. And what's going to happen is the CIA is going to go, oh, well, I can't really control that person, but let's try to hijack the movement and then pick this one. And then what ends up happening is it just dies out and gets ruined because that's what the government does. But you see protests in China, you see them, and you're hopeful, but you know that it's going to get ruined somehow. And so um, I think the foreign policy is terrible. I think the tit for tat. I mean, if you think of a country like Iran, they're going to tit for tat you back. And so either you stop, and they still might tat twice, especially when you're assassinating people. Um, but if you just have a peace, right, and they have their rights, you have your rights, and you can come to an agreement, maybe you'll get an actual authentic leader that will grow up in history and say, hey, what we're doing is wrong. We're coming to this agreement with peace, and now we can live in a harmony. I don't think that's a naive thing.
Yeah.
Will it happen? I don't know. It's very religious based. And so, whether people want to believe in Christianity or not, you live in a Christian country. And so, there is going to be conflict in general. And so, we have to figure out how to stop going back and forth with this tit for tat, because we've done stuff and they've done stuff. And then we've done stuff and then they've done stuff even more. And so, it's like, it gets a little crazy, and there's always going to be innocent people involved. And so, I think the foreign policy situation right now is quite bad. It's terrible.
Speaking of the issue of leadership, can you tell me about somebody in your life, or somebody that you think is a really great leader? Not necessarily political. I mean, it could be a coach, a teacher, or just somebody you worked for, or somebody who ran a club you were in, or can you tell me anything about anything like that in your life?
For some reason, I just still can't. Is only because I have my own unique ideas, and so when I'm thinking about the vision in the right way, it really, it's a complex issue. And so a lot of people say like abolish the EPA. It's a federal agency. Trump wants to do it. And it's just like, yes, but when you understand it from a science position, it's like, are we going in the right direction? Are we not? Do we, is it hindering science in a way? And so it's more of a complex issue. And so when you start having leaders or even like youth leaders and those sorts of things, I don't think I've ever had somebody that I 100% just said, hey, I'm going to listen to that person. They have great advice. And so I think I've just always had my ears open to all sorts of people around me. And so that's kind of like where I'm at right now. But I really, for some reason, I just don't. I don't know why.
Okay, so yeah, we talked about what your first 100 days would look like. What would be your long term if if let's say you were president for 8 years, what would you want America to look like after those 8 years?
Um, yeah, when you think about America in a nutshell, you have like car manufacturers like Tesla, right? They're battery powered, and then you have your fuel injected cars and oil. Believe it or not, fuel natural all those fossil fuels are finite resources, and I think people know that whether they want to or not. Go ahead and consume them all you want and pollute the earth or whatnot. But at some point, it's going to end. And so you have car manufacturers are saying, oh, here's the future. Let's just transition now. But in actuality, by 2050, the metals like cobalt, nickel, whatever we use for batteries is going to be a finite resources by 2050. So where are we? By that time, we're going to have no fossil fuels and no batteries. So are we going back deindustrialization, back in the day where now we have to use nothing, because we're going to consume coal, we're going to consume natural gas. Like, where are we? What's the future? And so
Yeah.
when you think about the United States with housing, even that, we talked a little bit about that. Those are the sorts of issues that I'm going to be focused on. Education is one, and so I'm big on school choice, only because I just dislike institutions. And so when teachers get frustrated and administrators get frustrated with kids that have to be in their school by law, the first thing they do is they go, oh, well, let's call the cops on them. You know what I mean? And so, like, is that really the choice? And so now you're generating this school to prison pipeline. And so I'm going to be fixing all those issues. Um, Another one is the social media. A lot of kids right now love social media, but why aren't they getting the traction that they need? And I had a young person that died by suicide in my community. He was like a t-shirt manufacturer. He has great designs, pretty cool. He's like, got one like, and so I contacted their mom through her friend. They didn't really contact me back. It was and I always research, and I don't know if it was appropriate or not, but the mom ended up contacting me back like literally a year later. Now she was open to it, and she shared the note. She didn't share the note with anybody, but she shared the note with me. And so I read it, and I asked to get access to his social media accounts and stuff like that, so I can kind of review what was really happening in his life. It was something simple, like he didn't put public. It's just set to friends. And so no matter how hard he tried to gain traction with social media, right? Because you can use that as a tool. It was set to friends, so it wasn't set to public. So he failed right there. And so a lot of kids go down that rabbit hole of doing really crazy stuff for attention, and they don't get it. And so that really impacts them in a different way. And so now you have like artificial intelligence, right? Algorithms picking what you want to see for you. And so now when you're in social media, you're getting like socialized in a different way. We have a lot of issues that need to be fixed. So
Yeah. We were talking about energy a minute ago. What do you think about nuclear as a source of power?
oh yeah, people are going to be very contentious about that because they think that you
Yeah.
can just kind of like put all this nuclear waste in a football field, and that's how much nuclear waste there is, and it's okay. But we know, like in Russia, there was a nuclear power plant that had an issue, right?
Chernobyl, I
Chernobyl.
believe you're talking about. Yes.
Japan was another one. I think a couple years ago, they had like 1 million gallons of like plutonium contaminated water waste, and they're like, well, we held it, we can't figure out what to do with it. They were like, we finally decided to dump it in the ocean. And I'm like, that sucks. Seriously, that sucks. But right by me, where I live in my city, it's called the Rocky Flats, and they were building like plutonium triggers for bombs, and so they were out there mining and stuff like that, and they had fires. And what happens is the glove boxes, they have like little filters, and the plutonium just sparks, and then the fumes went up into the sky. Right, you can just imagine it. Went all the way to Denver, got everyone sick, contaminated all the land. And they're like, oh, that won't happen again. And it happened again.
Yeah.
But this time it went up, went into a different direction. And then, for me, it's like now they're building houses on that property. And I'm seeing like these kids with like leukemia and stuff like that. And they're like, it's not associated with it. And I'm just like, I don't think so. And so like 5 days before Halloween, one of our little ones, was very sick. And so everyone came out and celebrated Halloween. And then that young person passed away 2 days later and never saw Halloween. So, it's impacted me in a different way. And so I would say that I'm not really into the whole idea of nuclear. I'm really opposed to it. Just listening from what my stories are.
Yeah. Well, what do you think would be a good solution to, have cheap energy, or at least energy as cheap as we're having now?
Cheap energy, as cheap as nuclear. Like one of my strong points, like that I'm an expert at, is cryogenic sciences. So helium-3 or hydrogen-3, protonated hydrogen, is helium. You can use that for cars. So Toyota has it. We have manufacturers that are doing jet engines, rocket engines. And so people like Blue Origin, I got to speak with them. Their main goal is to do like this international space station that's commercial. And that people go out there and do like science type stuff, which would be cool.
Yes.
And then what you would do is somehow do like a mining facility from that point to the moon, and then start gumming up a lot of the helium that is supposedly all over that moon, called superfuel. Like you always hear it as superfuel fuel. And so like I imagine that being the next step. And so when you think about like, oh, that meteor is coming by, like there's scientists out there going like, man, there's probably some tons of metals that we can use for like batteries and stuff like that we need now. So I think with the science in mind, you get something different as president than you would in any other generation as well. So
yeah. So you certainly sound like you're technical and you're into computers. What do you think about Bitcoin?
I've kind of lost faith in Bitcoin for some reason. I think that when we start thinking about like digital dollar, right, that's like going to be one of the most biggest concerns for people, right? That's the mark of the beast, 666. Like seriously,
yes.
Right? But when you have someone like me who understands it a little bit differently, it might be a little bit different. And so I'm a privacy person, and so like while social media companies were really stealing your data, it's changed a lot. I believe in things like encryption and so privacy. And so when you hire someone like myself, a libertarian president, you're going to get the abolishment of the IRS. It's going to change a little bit different. And so you get a little bit more independence. And so the digital dollar could work, right? But it needs to be encrypted. It needs to be your money and those sorts of things. But how do you pay taxes? All those concerns are going to go into a different loop. One of the things that governments are going to do is they're going to use things like quantum computers and create algorithms and start going through your digital dollar bank accounts and start harassing you for small amounts of money so you can pay taxes. But what they're really looking for is drug money, and you're laundering a lot of money, so you must be dealing drugs. We found you, right? Well, a libertarian is going to abolish the whole end the war on drugs, and so it changes a little bit. But you can have a digital dollar, but it's going to be encryption. Just don't go down to your nice restaurant, fast food joint, and try to buy anything, because their system's going to be down and you're not going to get any food because you have to have cash. So, but with Bitcoin in particular, I kind of like lost my trust into it a little bit for some reason. You have a lot of businesses that do start Bitcoin, spend all the money, and they're just like, I'm just going to go bankrupt. Like, that's a legit issue. And then you have companies that go viral, and then no matter what they do, they can't catch up. They can't figure out how to fix their own little Bitcoin version. And so they could buy all the companies they want. Oh, this company right here, buy them. They can fix this, one of our problems that we're having. And then, now all of a sudden you hit some weird bubble, and then now your stock crashes, and now they're going, what, you screwed us up, you screwed us over. They're like, I suck at this, and I tried, but I did spend millions and millions of dollars. And you're like, you're an asshole. So I lost trust into it a little bit. Great idea. It's the digital aspect and security and everything associated with it. But
are there you're afraid of central bank digital currency coming out. So who are some people from American history that you really admire?
From American history,
Yes.
yeah,
Or even
I like
world history for that matter.
Yeah, even world history. I still like all those people that are just weird. Like, you have all these politicians. You're like, I never researched into like German history and Hitler and all those crazy things, but I'm like, what the heck makes this guy even special? Like, I don't even know still. Like, what makes Putin so damn special? Like, you're a dictator and just conquer things. Saddam Hussein, like seriously, But you have people like Martin Luther King. You're like, man, you're kind of like, there was something there. You have like JFK, the FBI assassinating them, maybe, or the CIA involvement. But you have all these people, like, you never really had a chance to even have a voice. You see it in musicians too. You're like Robin Williams, right? You love his movies, and then he died by suicide, and you're just like, damn, like what was he going through? And he brought so much into the world that you can just love and cherish, and maybe even get influence in a different way. But now they're gone, and so you have all these people that kind of influence you, like growing up in general, with movies and music and those sorts of things, like Tupac and Biggie, right? They it just ended really bad, but you never really knew if it would turn out good or bad.
So you're very, very curious about some people. Yes, it's interesting to study some of these people. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up this interview?
I think like the little speech about me is I'm very involved in the community, as you well know, and so one of the things that I want to do for you is to offer you health and safety, but fix a lot of the issues. We have, youth suicide is fairly high. We have police that, promised change in 2020 and it never really happened. And so you look at war, if we end war, it's gonna change. And I'm fairly hopeful that we can do it. And so as a libertarian, you're gonna end the war on drugs. A lot of those things, like, I'm gonna legitly make drug overdoses, zero, right? Because we're not going to have tainted drugs. And so we can start there, at least a baseline, and start focusing on things like opioid addiction and those sorts of things. And so I think even businesses, like we talked about with the free trade that we can have, would be a benefit. And so I think overall, go to my website, Joshua for Unity, Joshua FOR Unity.com. Drop some
Yes.
Bitcoins there too, right? And sign up for the newsletter so we can keep chatting and talking, because I definitely want to know more about you guys out there. So, and thanks for having me.
Yes, so you want to learn more about the Libertarian Party? Well, we're certainly it certainly will be an interesting ride, Joshua. I'm Chris Baker, and please like the video, subscribe, go check out my novel Escape from the Village. Go check out some other videos, and also among the other men who are among the other candidates so far who are running, you want to come on, please come on. I know I've reached out to some of you on Facebook or other medias. So far it's men, but we'll probably get some nice ladies jumping into this as well.
Yep.
Who are running for president. So this has been a very interesting conversation, and we are out.
Thank you, Chris, for your community service. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.